welcome to Beau Keyte. Beau is I don't know, how should I describe you, Beau? A lean guru, a subject matter expert. He's probably knows more and done more in lean than most people that you'll run into in this business. He's written a few books. One of the books, Beau, I already sort of highlighted for these students. We've got 6 teams doing lean projects for various organizations locally here, or maybe even remotely. But one of the things that they've got to do is they've got to do a value stream map, right? Current state and future state. I told them you wrote a little book on that. It was kind of the state of the art for bringing lean and value stream mapping into the office. They've also got to do an A3, and I know we've talked, and you've got a lot of knowledge on that. So I'm going to encourage the students also in the context of this conversation, if they've got some questions or some things that you can help them or provide a little free coaching on how they can do their projects better or whatnot, I would encourage them to do that, right? We'll get some questions going.
That's great.
Yeah. So Beau, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about where you are, what you're doing right now. I know you're kind of semi-retired. I'll put semi in quotes, and you can maybe sort of say, where are you at this point?
Yeah. So thanks for having me, first of all, and hello to everybody. I've been in continuous improvement, mostly lean, for 30 years. And so the reason that I have such high accolades from Eric is simply through tenure. I mean, anybody who's been in this long has basically seen everything and done everything and been on the bleeding edge of new stuff, because 30 years ago, it wasn't nearly this stuff out there. The field was very narrow in scope, and now it's expanded to much more thinking. And I was one of the few that was always pressing the boundary, saying, well, this is interesting, but there's got to be more. So it's really rounded out into something that looks really good out there in the industry right now. But at the same time, I'm a very small part of. I'm almost retired. I said I'd retire when the phone stopped ringing because I really like what I do. And the pandemic created the phone stopped ringing. So I've turned my attention to education with the help of Eric several years ago, because I realized that about half of my nest egg is due to me trading basic stuff to companies who don't know anything. And that really upsets me when I think about it, because basic stuff should be coming out of school.
Yeah.
And it's not coming out of school. So the higher education is doing a very bad job of teaching basic problem solving to young people who could then migrate into business and actually be productive, as opposed to just doing things the same way that the business has always done it, which is usually broken.
Right. But I want to just sort of correct it, except in this class.
Yes.
Right?
So Eric, there are a few exceptions, and I'm being sincere. Eric was among the first, and he's doing a really good job. I haven't seen his MBA class. Ohio State has a nice MBA class going on. I teach online now for University of Dayton MBA. It doesn't focus on operations improvement as much. I just finished a class last night. It's fine for knowing a broad scope of operational issues, but not that great at problem solving per se. So I'm really glad to do this, and I got involved about a year ago, maybe more, in writing a college textbook for bachelor students in business. My understanding is there is a mandatory class in operations management. I don't know, I'm not there. Right. And so there are a few out there, and I'm writing something different. And the interesting thing now, when I turn my focus on education, is how do I get better thinking instilled among students? So when I was asked to write this book, or help write this book, I said, okay, but I'm not going to write about theories. I'm not going to write about, this is supposed to be for service people, because bachelors in business don't go into shop floors. So I'm not going to talk about manufacturing, and although that's all I talk about now, I'm going to talk about service, and I'm going to be using real examples from real clients. I'm going to be very pragmatic about how this stuff actually works in industry. So that's been my job, and the other professors are very happy writing about theory and other stuff, although some are more pragmatic than others. But it's a real balancing act between how do you cover what professors like to see in a book and still deliver what the students need, and there's a gap there. There's a big gap there. So how do you thread that needle? Eric's done a great job, but there are thousands of professors who haven't.
Yeah, we kind of got a mutual admiration thing going, Beau, and also probably a mutual appreciation for wine. And
well, that helps lean thinking.
Yeah.
It helps lean thinking a lot. The wine.
It does. Hey, Beau, thinking about like one of the topics you brought out is, how do you get people better at problem solving? And I've got a question up here on the whiteboard. I don't know if you saw it when the camera was sort of turned around, but I was going to break the teams into huddles, and really they're just sort of starting to sort of build things out. But I thought they were moving a little bit too fast the last time we did this in the last class, and they were already jumping into the solution space. And I thought maybe there should be a little bit more discussion or questions around, what's the value, right? What's the value created? And I usually look at, I usually tell people there's like two kinds of problems that we address in lean or in trying to improve processes is, there's value problems and then there's process problems. And what do you see in companies and organizations? What kind of problems are generated when companies or organizations don't really understand the value? Right? How does that sort of manifest, or do you have some?
Well, so if they don't understand, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
If they don't understand what's important to the customer, they do what they think is important to the customer, and that's usually a mismatch. So, since if they can't define value, then they don't know really how to design a valuable process because they don't know what the customer is looking for. So a great example might be engineering, where an engineering drawing requires 7 signatures. And I guarantee you the shop floor and the customer doesn't care if there's 7 signatures or not, but there's 7 reviews. They just want a good drawing. That's a very simple example. So and when you talk to people about, well, you have 7 signatures here, how much time does each engineering manager spend looking at this drawing before they sign? And the answer is no time. If the first guy signs it, it must be good because that's a good engineer. But it's going to sit on my desk for 3 weeks, then I'm get to it, just stamp it, throw it to another desk for 3 weeks and stamp it. And all of a sudden we have 6 weeks of reviews where no work is being done because everyone's trusting the previous signatures to do the right job. And the customer doesn't care. Neither does the manufacturing floor. So that's an example I used last night, but be very thoughtful about that. And also in the insurance business and in the banking business, a really good example of that is risk management. Now, when I first heard that, I thought there were PhDs running around mismanagement, all these algorithms and, man, really smart people figuring out what's going on with the economy and everything. No, these are guys inspecting the work of other people before it leaves the institution. These are inspectors. Inspection adds no value. It never did. Because if you inspect something and nothing's wrong, why are you looking at it? Right. If you inspect something and something is wrong, why is it wrong? Why would someone ever do good work and give it to you when it's wrong? That means somebody missed something and wasn't trained on something upstream. So inspection is always a mess because it's assumed to improve the process when all it does is demonstrate how broken the process is.
Yeah. And I think that sort of brings up an interesting point, from a process improvement and problem standpoint. So we use inspections and things like that to surface problems. but then we don't go to the sort of the feedback or kind of go back to the source. If that's like another part of the process where that thing is created, are we providing that information in a timely, useful way so that stuff can be corrected and not generated the first time? Because one of the readings for the MBA was about Jidoka and building in quality, right?
Right. So if you look at a process, I think most people have an assumption that it's a good process. I would. But that's an assumption. How do you test it? Where's the proof that it's a good process? And so when you get back to problem solving, there's got to be a gap somewhere between where you want to go and where you are now.
Right.
And I think, so I'm jumping around just a little bit off topic.
Oh, sure.
The biggest problem I see in solving problems is not spending enough time understanding them. Because everybody in that room and everybody on this screen has had a life where they jump to solutions, they're given 2 minutes to fix a problem and they fix it. And they don't fix it. Because they haven't figured out what's really wrong yet. They just slap something on, they make some assumptions, slap it on and walk away. So the best thing you can do for helping a company or helping a process is to just dig deep. And what's really going on, not what we think is going on. Go down and take a look, get some data. What's really, really going on, and how do we know what's going on? Show me the data.
Right.
And then you don't have assumptions, you have numbers. And from the numbers, you can create facts. And then you can start challenging yourself, do I know enough yet or not to solve this problem?
Yeah.
And even then, everything's an experiment. If you think a process is working, how do you know? So test it. What is it actually supposed to do versus what it actually does?
Right. And that sort of points me to another thing I wanted to highlight to the students too, and this kind of puts in, I think the first time I heard the sort of the measure, was it complete and correct? I forget how
Complete
you
and accurate.
Complete and accurate.
Percent complete and accurate. I personally created it.
Yeah. Okay. So you invented that, right? So
yes. That's the only thing I created.
Yeah, but that's sort of one way to, certainly on knowledge work sort of processes, stuff that's sort of moving around, being able to measure, well, how often does stuff get all the way through the process, complete and accurate? Is that I don't know, what's your sort of thinking on that as sort of an overall measure for folks, and how do they make use of that?
It's a great beginning. I'm not sure that it's the end, but it's a great beginning to surface problems. So so for those of you who've ever played in manufacturing, people usually measure outgoing quality. How good is the piece that just left the machine? And that's very easy to do because you measure it, right? But if you ask someone, how good is that application you just passed on to somebody else? They're going to say, it's perfect because I did it. But if you ask the person who received it, how good is that application which just served to you? It's junk. Nothing's right. Because we haven't figured out how to test the quality of information as we pass it along. So in a service industry or a service process like accounting or marketing or sales or HR, or a service industry like government or finance or whatever, we have to look at the incoming quality into a step, not the outgoing quality, because the outgoing quality is unknown. It's not testable because no one's told them what's right yet. So the receiving person says, how often is all the information there and correct? Mm-hmm. And so, because the implication is, if it's not, then I have to put the work down and go looking for someone who gave this to me, either virtually or by phone or by walking. Hey, what did you mean to put here? Because I don't know what you're doing yet. And that is a lot of rework that creates a lot of frustration and cost to the process. So measuring percent CNA in the service process is an excellent way to start to understand what's really going on. It won't show you root cause. Yeah. It'll show you where to start digging deep.
And that's interesting too, because it it sort of begs the question as well, do you have good standards for what complete is, or what, accurate is in different ways? And a lot of times we just kind of assume people know, right? Or there's a lot of, tribal knowledge that's not explicit or visual or all those sorts of things, right?
Yeah, so so you talked about doing value stream maps. In my value stream maps, I always have percent complete and accurate on every process step, period.
Right.
Period. And it's evident when you talk to people, it's evident where it's a mess, because they're very frustrated and they're screaming about it.
Yeah, it's pain points for them.
Yeah.
I'm also going to, encourage my students here to ask questions. I could, I know we have a tendency to kind of go on and on, but let's find out what some of the customers of this discussion want or need.
Let me put one more thing down they might want to ask about. Value stream mapping is unusual in Lean. It's one of three things in Lean, one of three tools in Lean that's both technical and social. And those are hard to find. And it makes them really important, because anybody could design a perfect value stream, but it's never going to work. It's never going to work because people are involved, cultures are involved. And so the perfect one is not the same thing as a working one. And so what's really important to do in the social tool is to not seal anything in concrete until the people have spoken, because they're going to tell you why a value stream won't work, why a new idea won't work, because they live with it every day. So it's a very social piece of change, and it really helps it out well when you do that. And we didn't start doing that till, I don't know, 12 years ago. You were probably around there seeing that happen.
Right.
It hasn't been that long.
Yeah. Well, and that sort of brings up a good point, maybe in these teams can think about that. So it's one thing to do that, perfect value stream map and hand it into your professor. It's another thing to take it to the, to the organization or the sponsor and have it socialized a little bit, right? That's one of the reasons why a lot of times we'll post those really big, ugly, messy value stream maps up on the wall in an organization, so that all the people that are walking back and forth in front of it can kind of see and say, oh, is that my box? Is that really my complete and accurate number, right?
Yeah.
That socialization piece, I forget about that sometimes, or we do forget about that.
And if you're helping companies, if your teams are helping companies, don't take them through to utopia. They're never going to get there. Give them something useful. My personal timelines are what can you do in 18 to 24 months? Anything beyond that is nirvana. Like, you're never going to get beyond 24 months. Things are going to change. Just focus. What are you going to do in 18 to 24 months? What goal can you hit? And focus on that, and they'll be way happier.
Right. Okay.
So that's enough. I'll take questions.
Yeah. Okay. So questions from the class? Anybody have any questions for Beau? Yeah, Shannon? I get it.
Hi.
Hi.
We're kind of all preparing to enter the workforce. What would be your biggest piece of advice, just as, kind of entering a new organization and not wanting to ruffle feathers by, upending an organizational process or something like that? But what is your best piece of advice for us as new job seekers?
Did you get that, Beau? Is the microphone picking up okay?
Half of it. So are you going in as a team and consulting, or are you going in as a new employee?
I think most of us new employees.
New employee, Beau.
Oh.
Question, so.
Well,
Ruffling feathers. Have you ever ruffled any feathers, Beau?
Yes. Yes. Early on, I ruffled feathers until I figured out that I wasn't where they were. I had to see their context in their work. I had to understand what they were going through. And they had to be the ones drawing the map, not me. So the other way of thinking about it, I would always, so I'm going to talk a little bit about how I approach clients and then get back to maybe more directly answering your question. My approach to clients is, before I take a team through a mapping exercise, and note I said team, I don't make maps anymore, the team does. It's their work, it's their deliverable. I go around through the value stream, and I just ask simple questions like, what makes a bad day? No one's ever asked them that question. So, so they open up, and you have this notebook of things that go wrong at each process step. And you use that in the back of your head, because when they're drawing maps, you say, didn't you say one time that XYZ happened a lot? I don't see that on the map at all. Oh yeah, I forgot. So that keeps me humble and keeps the thinking at the source of the work. So when you approach a new job, everyone's doing everything they can to the best of their abilities. For the most part, most people are giving their best. That's my assumption. Things are holding them back from doing better. So if you're doing the thinking and saying, hey, want to do it this way instead of that way, and they see you as the young sprout coming in, they will resent it. It's better to wait until a problem surfaces, and then you can start asking some general questions like, well, how often does this happen? Or what can we learn from this? Is it worth looking at or not? Because I guarantee you probably want to jump in and fix things. I do too. But if you haven't been asked to fix it, you shouldn't step in. Very simply, because they will see it as a threat or an annoyance and ignore you. So if there's something churning in your department about making changes and making improvements, that's fine. You can put your hook up to that horse. I forget how you say it, but run for it. But even then, you have to understand that you can't change their work. You can help them think about what they're doing in their work, but you can't change their work because you're not living with a result. They are. It has to be comfortable for them. So that's part capability, that's part culture. I remember times when I helped a team rebalance a line. And so I was saying, well, if we really want to get some nice flow here, everyone has to have about the same amount of work going down. They were making the big fat seals that go on garage doors on the bottom with little sensors to make sure things stop. If there's a kid underneath, it stops the garage door. And so we're doing it, and we figured out how to do this, and we basically said, okay, if we do this right, one person doesn't have to be here anymore. Well, that's Robin. Robin needs a job. We can't let go of Robin. We have to keep the old process. And I realized that no one had approached them to say, by the way, if anyone comes off this line, we have work for you. And the boss hadn't gotten involved at that level. Right. So you have to be very careful about what you say versus what the expectation is versus what the expectation is laid out by management.
Yeah. And
if they haven't said, do whatever you need to, you're also employed, look out, nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I don't know, does that answer the question? Because I only heard part of it.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's I think it's a hard learned behavior for people that want to fix things, you want to point out problems and stuff, but I think just going in with an attitude of curiosity, and just asking why a lot of things, or what do you like about your process, or even what is your process for doing this, just express that curiosity and be willing to listen and then look for those opportunities, right?
So that's
a deeper conversation.
So are you talking about the shingle model at all?
Yeah.
Okay, so that goes to the bottom piece of the triangle in terms of respect for everybody.
Yeah.
If you tell them what to do, you're not respecting them.
Right.
If you're inquisitive and helpful, you're respecting them. Yeah. So that and being humble, that's not necessarily leading with humility.
We lost your sound. I think you muted accidentally. I think your Siri's on. Oh, my Siri's on. Oh. Siri, stop.
Done.
All right, there we are.
You know, I don't have an assistant like that.
You know, I gotta turn that off. It's less help than, yeah, anyway, go ahead. Bill, I'm
Anyway,
sorry.
I think it's really, really good to focus on the behaviors on the cultural enablers at the bottom of the shingle triangle.
Right.
Or pyramid, whatever. I really think it's important for every single employee to do the best they can to be humble, which maybe you're not a leader, but leading with humility. You still have some portions of leading, or you will soon, and respecting people and taking that to heart. What does that really mean to show respect? Because if you show respect, 9 times out of 10 you'll get it back, and that's important. It establishes a good framework for working together.
Let's see, last question for Beau. Anybody have something? Yeah, Daniel?
Maybe I'll come over to the speak.
Yeah, thanks. You can do that. Pull up a chair. You're on camera now.
Hey, Beau,
Hey.
so, sorry, I wore my running shoes today, I had to get it in. Our project that we're doing for the class is it's knowledge work, it's service. We're looking at a proposal creation process for a large firm. And you had commented early about like going, when you go in, being of value and delivering value to that customer, right? And so one of the things that the process is ad hoc, it's tribal knowledge. And so we're going around and interviewing the various stakeholders in the process flow to understand, if there's even agreement amongst all the stakeholders on the process. That seems to be sort of in line with the comments you made on call earlier on the call about, talking to the people and engaging and having them sort of, come to some realization of themselves. Or is there any other sort of coaching or general comments you can make about things that we could do to sort of create value in a knowledge work or soft process where there isn't necessarily a product that's going into a box with a scan code on the side and sold on a shelf somewhere?
Yeah, so I've helped lots of companies with their proposal activities, usually a real mess. And the key, a couple things have to happen. You have to get the information right to put a quote together. Getting the information is usually a snarl. Putting the quote together is not bad once you have the right information. But how many times you have to reach out to get information, either from somebody in your company or back to the customer, because everything hasn't presented itself before you start. So you have all these false starts that take a lot of time. So you worry about how we do that. You also worry about what's the customer really looking for? When do they want it? If they want it in 5 days, don't give it in 10. But if they want it in 5 days and you spend 4 days reaching back and forth trying to get the specs just to do a costing, you've lost 5 days. So what I would think about is the customer first. What is a competitive response time? What's a competitive response time? And do you need to beat it to be competitive? Once you have that number, so I think it's great that you talk to each other. I think it's way better if they talk to each other. You have an understanding, they don't. So you have to get them in there in a room and map it. And map things like how often do we have to reach out to people at different stages, and all it does is screw us up. Not half the time they don't give us the right information or all of it, so we call them back again. It is an absolute snarl in most proposal processes, which is a lot of fun because it's kind of a candy store. You walk in, you can do anything, it's better. But you really want to focus on if everyone else is doing it in 5 days, you better not be at 6.
Gotcha.
You want to be at 4. You want to be a competitive advantage to get your number in before anybody else. And then based on that, that will guide the timeline between what they now do and what they have to do, and will challenge a lot of the reasons that they can't get the work done. Because I'm guessing that in, say it's 4 days, I bet there's not 16 hours worth of work. I bet there isn't. But yet it takes so long. Why? We're waiting for information because we didn't get it to begin with. So the real key thing is, how do you start to correlate the information? There's different ways. There could be standard stuff out there that you have access to from other departments, so they don't have to repeat it each time, or find a way to query the customer with exactly what you need to tell them. We're asking these questions so we don't have to ask them 2 days from now and frustrate you. We just want to hit you once. So that's something to worry about. What's really clear is a goal.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense to improve a situation if you don't know how good you should be.
Gotcha. Thank
All right,
you.
good deal. Thanks, Beau. We're trying to keep these a little bit tighter. I know you and I did some work on the Think in Our series, trying to, pack some real knowledge into just 15 minutes. This was about 30 minutes of good stuff and a lot of wisdom. So thank you so much for participating and doing this. Just so that we can make sure that you feel appreciated and thanked, I'll do the camera work and let the MBA students sort of wave to you at this point. So we got this as a way to end. So why don't you give Beau a little wave as a thank you there? And there we go.
Thanks.
Those are some of the young lives you've once again affected here, Beau.
Yes, we're counting on you. We need someone paying into Social Security.
There you go. All right, Beau, take care. We'll see you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.